Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Sporting Fan Podcast. Today I'm going to speak about something that's very topical at the moment because it's obviously links into what I spoke in my last podcast when it comes to really players when they spoke about the sponsorship, and that's really the players' roles in the basically in the management of the company, and how their voice matters in how the company, in this case, the management side of the organization really goes about their business. Because there's been a lot of comments this year, and obviously is like I said last week, the most topical ones have obviously been around sponsorship with the Pat Cummins one, as well as the netballers with Gene Reinhart. It's a very hard thing to say, like, when players can and can't have a say, because obviously they deserve a say. Everyone deserves a say about how things should be done, but obviously there needs to be a limit. And there's always different situations in what actually happens, because obviously if I spoke in my last podcast that the Cronulla Sharks turned down a sponsor because they didn't agree with the moral values of the company, of the sponsor, so they turned it down. That wasn't from the players. That was just a corporate decision. But this is when the players come across and they talk about, you have to do things this way, you have to do things that way. That's more what I'm talking about here. When the players say, we have to be consulted. And then obviously, I'll start off with the Pat Cummins one, for example. He said that, he didn't want Cricket Australia to accept a $40 million sponsorship with Atlanta Energy. This one seemed a bit odd because he hasn't come out publicly in the past, basically saying he didn't like their policies. He actually appeared in ads for them as part of the, I don't know if that's, I'm assuming, considering other players like Josh Hazelwood, Nathan Lyon, Mitchell Stark, these kind of blokes, they all appeared in ads. I'm assuming that it was part of the sponsorship deal that the Australian cricketers actually appeared in ads for Atlanta Energy. And Pat Cummins appeared in those ads, and now all of a sudden he says he doesn't want to. He wants Cricket Australia to sever ties. It seems, like Cricket Australia probably could take the hit to a certain degree because, they should have plenty of money in the bank after the last couple of as much as we had COVID. They should have plenty of money in the bank because, they had the TV rights. They had the Indian tour where I don't know how true this is, but they got something like $300 million out of that tour, and then they had the Ashes last year, which the last summer I should say, where that brought in a ton of money, and that really so they should have a lot of money in the bank because of those two tours. But I think it's still better for Pat Cummins to go, okay, this is what we should do, and try to use his position as Australian Test captain, try to say, like, look, why don't you guys try to push more towards a cleaner energy rather than just saying, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to cut it. Because really, like I said in my last podcast, this more affects the lower tier blokes, right? This more affects, grassroots, the women's game, state players, because, sure, he might have to take a pay cut, but he's earning, by the time you add in all his sponsorships, his Cricket Australia deal, his IPL deal, this deal, that deal, the other deal, he would have had so many deals that he's probably earning something like $8 or $10 million a year. Once you add all that up, he's probably earning, from Cricket Australia, he's earning probably $2 or $3 million as one day in Test captain. And yeah, sure, if he cuts, they cut $200,000 because he lost the sponsorship, that would be like, everybody else, being cut from, 100,000 to 99,500, right? You might not need to do subtle changes, but for him that's nothing. He's earning that much money that it won't have that much of an impact on him. I think Cricket Australia should have really put him into line and said, look, in future, for this particular case, it's too late. They've already lost the sponsor, but I think Cricket Australia should really be calling him in and saying, look, Pat, in future, if you don't agree with the sponsor, speak to us. We can we'll review it, and there'll be better ways to actually go forward from here and say, if your concerns are valid and they really are and personally, I don't know what Alinta is like. I don't know if, this is not a slight against Alinta. I don't know much about the company. I'll be the first one in it. But, if they're a dodgy company, then sure, cut ties. Or, a sponsor in the future, if they're dodgy, then cut ties. If it's just simply that he thinks that they're not doing enough to create green energy, which I think, from what I can gather, is what his main gripe is, then, just say, mate, let's put more money into creating greener, cheaper energy for people, because I think that would be better, because then the people down down the line, where local clubs and that and lower tier players, state players, and the women's game can actually benefit from that sponsor. And you can also get your message out saying, I want it greener. They could go greener, and then everyone's happy, right? And it's better all around, rather than they're without a major sponsor and it looks bad. Because it just makes you look like it looks like the lunatics are running the asylum kind of thing. The corporate's there for the corporate, and obviously it affects you because you have to be in the ads, but I think it's a lot better to just speak to them and say, this is the way forward. And this is also the same as for the netball. Like I said, in the netball, a lot of people are blaming Gina Reinhart here, saying, all she needed to do was apologise. If she apologised, it wouldn't have been a problem. If she does properly discuss, the issue, saying, what my father said was despicable, it wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been a problem, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I think it still would have been, from what I can gather, it was a little bit deeper than that, because the players just simply said, we ain't wearing the... and this is where it differs from the Cricket Australia. From what I can gather with the Cricket Australia, they were still going to wear the shirts, but they just didn't want to appear... Pat Cummins didn't want to appear in ads. The netball said that they didn't want to wear the logo of the sponsor. And it's just well... I think it was a 15. From what I can gather, it was $15 million over 4 years. If you're spending $15 million on a sponsorship is a form of advertising. I want that advertising out there. Like, otherwise I'm just going to go elsewhere. I'm going to spend that $15 million over 4 years somewhere else. Like, I'll promote it another way. And I think, the CEO really should have come out publicly hard against, because the player in question hadn't even represented Australia. And ironically enough, the team's called the Diamonds, and they were protesting against a mining company. Like, anyone else see the irony in that? Like, where do you get diamonds? From mining. Like, you look at your own freaking... Are they going to protest against their freaking national team name now? Like, honestly, like, the CEO should have just come out hard and told them to, like, basically shut up, and let us deal with it. Gina Reinhart didn't come out and say that, all the Aboriginals should be sterilised and all that shit. Like, she wasn't the one that said it. Her father did. And the constant bashing of her, saying, oh, it's all her fault. No, it's not. Her father was the one that said it. It's just like, like I said in the last podcast, like, do they, like, are these netballers going to come out and blame every single German, because, the vast majority of Germans, because, like, so many Germans were involved in the, Nazi regime. Virtually everyone was. Even the last Pope was a bloody, was in the Nazi youths. True story. Are you going to go after the bloody Pope and say you're a freaking Nazi? No. You're going to go after the Catholic Church because of it? No. Like, and that's a guy that was the head of the freaking church, and he was the one that was fucking in it. Yet they don't go after the Catholic Church for that. Are they going to bloody go after the rest of the Nazis, the rest of Germany, saying, oh, your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather was part of that garbage from, in the 30s and 40s that went around and killed bloody all those Jews and gypsies and all that? It's just like, no, people, you're not going to do that. And they actually committed murder. They actually were the ones that sterilised people. They didn't just talk about it. They actually did it. And, they did that stuff. They sent people to gas chambers. They had Stalin's, made Stalin's son, as much as he was a freaking ratbag as well. But, trust me, I'm no defender of Stalin. But they made him bloody commit suicide and bloody run into an electric fence. They bloody had all this other stuff, go on. They bloody burned people and shot people on the street, starved people to death. Are you going to make every German apologise for that? Are you going to make every, Japanese person apologise for, all the death marches they sent POWs on during World War II? Like, it's a stupid argument. It is an absolute moronic comment to say, and they're like, oh, it was more modern times. The guy's been dead for 30 years. Like, honestly, the interview was 40 years of a guy that was being dead for 30 years. Was it right? Obviously, no. No, like, no one's saying it is. And if they do, well, then they deserve to be called out. If they says, I agree with what he said, call him out. If she says, yes, I have the same views as him, then yes, I would say the player should come out and say, we don't want the sponsorship. The sponsorship's not worth it. As much as it could send us broke, we don't want the sponsorship. But, just coming out because of what a family member has said in the past, that means that, this could literally send netball broke. And, everyone's now going to, either everyone's going to be out of the job, or they have to take a massive pay cut. And again, it's the same as Pat Cummins. It's going to flow down to the lower levels of the sport. The clubs, they're not going to get equipment and all that because of it. It stagnates the growth of the sport. And, they think, and then they try to play the victim, saying, everyone's bullying us. It's just like, well, there's an old expression, go woke, go broke, You want to blame everybody else, you want to blame someone for somebody else's behavior, then people, you're going to lose moral high ground. There's a difference between, it's like anything in life. There's, you're going to keep bringing up stuff of the past, or you're just going to just cause trouble. People are not going to like it. No one's going to listen to you. And even if you're 100% in the right, which in this case they're not, people aren't going to listen. I just think the CEO should have just come out and said, look, we don't agree with the players, we can understand the player's position. We don't, but we don't agree with their position because, we don't believe that someone should apologise for a family member's behaviour. You're not going to make every murderer's, child, apologise for their father's or mother's behaviour, the parents' behaviour. Don't expect him to, her to. So, the players need to get reeled in. Like, they need to realise that their actions have consequences. They're starting to learn this the hard way now because, they're probably going to have to take a pay cut. Because quite frankly, who's going to... Because this is the other thing. Like, Cricket Australia is going to get another sponsor, right? They're... Eventually, someone's going to step in. But, really, who's going to sponsor netball now? Cricket is... they're not held in the same, breath as the Cricket Australia. Like, I don't think that, Tennis Australia, what Cummins did was probably the right. He didn't, like I said, I don't think he went about the right way. But the cricket, Australian cricket is held in a very high standing here in Australia. Like, the netball is not. Not like trying to be blunt or shit on like a female sport, but if you ask the average person on the street, they'll go, you ask them, name 5 cricketers, a good percentage of people can. Like, you can, they'll at least be able to name a few, like maybe, Marnus Labuschagne, Steve Smith, Dave Warner, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, even past, and they can name past players like Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, obviously the greatest of all time, Bradman, the War Brothers, and the list goes on. If you ask the average person, name a netballer, most people would say maybe, you might get at best Catherine Cox and Liz Ellis, who retired. I don't even know when they retired, but they're players from 10 and 15 years ago, right? And majority of people, people, I don't even, before this kind of thing, majority of people wouldn't even be able to name a player. I still can't name a player, like a netball player, like, to be honest. And And with the damage that they've done, they're probably not going to get another sponsor now, right? Like, they're not going to have someone that's willing to step in and give them, basically nearly $4 million a year over 4 years, just under. And because they're just going to go, they're going to dig up, these players are going to dig up everything from my family's past, whether it be the CEO, the chairman, the what have you. They're going to dig up something from the past. They're going to make it a massive bloody media shitstorm. And, it's going to destroy our brand. Why would I sponsor them? They just didn't think about it, how it might affect everybody else. And, they didn't even think how it might actually affect them. Themselves, let alone everybody else. And, I did a podcast, one of the first podcasts I did was Women in Sport, and, they're saying, we want equality, and we want equal pay, yada, yada, yada. Well, the only way you're going to get equal pay is if you actually stop acting like a complete dickhead. And the fact of the matter is, there's an old expression, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. If you got the male sports that are, dominating, see what they do. For the most part, the male athletes shut their mouths and, get on with life. With a very, very occasionally, like Pat Cummins, do they come out against a sponsor. So them to, that's a good example. Like, only come out when it's necessary. And then obviously obviously I've spoken a lot about sponsorship here with Cricket Australia and, Netball Australia. So, but there's also another dimension about this. And obviously, and this is another topic that was hot this year is the Pride jersey. So, and this is, and I've gone into detail what I think about this with the Pride jersey at Manly, but I'm just going to go, because this was and I will go in, and this does go back to Cricket Australia and a sponsorship, which I'll go into in a little bit. But this was basically for those that, and I'm sure a majority of the people that are listening already know the story, but for those that don't, basically, a very long story short, the Manly Seagulls wore a Pride jersey this year in the round that they were supposed to play the Roosters. 7 players, because they're Christian, Christian beliefs to be homophobes, and basically said we're not playing in it. Is basically the very long story short. So this is again going into the corporate side. How much right do because there have been other players throughout history, like, for example, Fawad Ahmed, who played for, was it Fawad Ahmed? Whoever it was, he was a Muslim player playing for Australia, and Australia's major sponsor is VB. At the time was VB on the jersey. And, alcohol company, Muslims don't mash. But going back to the Manly thing, I'll go back to that Cricket Australia one in a minute. But a lot of people called them out, saying Josh LAI, his sister's gay and all that, and saying, I don't support her. I love her, but I don't love her lifestyle. You get the shits when people said you want to say everyone else's lifestyle is shit, but as soon as someone said, well, your lifestyle's freaking shit, you go, this is bullying and this is, anti-Christian hysteria and all this bullshit. It's just like, well, so it's fine for you to be a bully and tell everyone else how to live, but it's not alright for when people turn around and say, mate, your lifestyle is actually shit, which, don't get me started on freaking religious things. But again, the question becomes, how the communication between... See, this is a different thing, like, slightly different to the Cricket Australia, with Pat Cummins, Cricket Australia with Pat Cummins and with sponsorship, as well as the Netball Australia with sponsorship. This is a different situation where it's how much of a role should the players have in corporate, and what they should wear, because obviously there's it would be a very complicated claim here if Manly wanted to go further and they wanted to sack the players, because they the argument will be, obviously, in this situation, the defense will be, what the players would say if they did get, and for those listening that don't know the situation, the players didn't get sacked, but I'm just saying theoretically here, if they did get sacked, the arguments will be, well, religious freedoms, whereas Manly's defense was, well, we had a work the jersey is a work uniform. They refused to wear a work uniform. They didn't show up to work, and when the paid work. So that's basically what it is. And so the argument was, should employees be more open with the players? It's just like, my personal opinion is the players should just play. But I also believe that because it was pretty obvious that this was going to cause an issue. So I think employees should have, teams should always ask the players when something they know is going to cause a problem, they should say, we should do this. Like, we should speak to our players. But you also can't have it where the players say, because it's a fine line saying, having that discussion and just, making the players basically run the asylum, because basically you can't have players dictating what they can and can't wear. But again, you also have to, when you're going into, I think the way that they should have put it, instead of making it a religious thing, they should have put it more, the players should have put it more as, well, we're supposed to be supporting women in this round, because it was women league round. They should have put it more as, well, we're supposed to be supporting women. This guy has nothing to do with, this pride jersey has nothing to do with it. It's not a pride inclusivity round. And this is not supporting women. And personally, I think they would have got a lot more support. Personally, everyone knows it would have been a backdrop of the religious aspect. Everyone knows that. You know that. Everyone listening knows that. I know it. We all know it. But I think they would have got a little bit more sympathy if they put it like that, because basically Manly, what management were thinking in that was stupid. They should have, well, for starters, like I said, it was a women in league round. It just ruined the round. No one spoke about the good work that women do in the sport. All the media talk, and a lot of people didn't even realise until after the event that it was women in league round. A lot of people still didn't realise it was women in league round. So I think it would have been better. Like, to an extent, I think the players, like, with the homophobia shit, like, I think they were wrong, but I think it would have been better if they just said, make it women's jersey. And there wouldn't have been a problem. They just wore a pink jersey instead of maroon, and then they, and then players complained about that, then they would have gone, well, you're a freaking sexist. And then they would have basically had a lot less, So there's that thing where that's where I think the communication from players can be better. Again, similar kind of thing that I was saying to Pat Cummins. They could have made that point, instead of putting it on a religious aspect, they should have put it on a gender basis, saying, because then they could spin it where they say, we do support the LGBTQ community, which clearly they don't. But they said we'd support it, but we should have done this another round. Because you're taking away from what women do. You're basically diminishing what my partner does, what my mum does, what my sister does, what my female cousin does, what the, all these, all the female administrators do. You're taking away from them. This isn't a slight on the gays. This is a slight on the club, saying that you don't believe in women. So that's where I think that the club and the players could have actually communicated a lot better than what they did. Because if they'd put it like that, how many people would have put their hand up and said, yeah, we support them? I can guarantee you a lot of people would have still got, they would have still had the backlash, but a lot more people would have supported them. And then, going back to the Fawad Ahmed situation, having, communicating with the club, with the religion, and so this is, coming into the 2 points that I made before. Fawad Ahmed, religious grounds and sponsorship. He doesn't agree. He didn't believe in it because of his religious beliefs. He, everyone knows that Muslims, devout Muslims don't drink alcohol. They don't like it. They don't like it. But he, I think where Fawad Ahmed, a lot of backlash came from Fawad Ahmed is that a lot of people said, did he take a pay cut or refuse a match payment at all? A lot of people said, well, you're more than happy, and, obviously he didn't. And a lot of people said that, well, you're more than willing to accept a pay from Cricket Australia, which involves alcohol payments in it, payments from an alcohol company, yet you're not willing to wear the sponsors. VB, to their credit, said, we'll take it off for, we accept these religious beliefs, we'll take the sponsor, you can take the logo off. They were, happy with that. So the problem, so that's where VB came out actually looking really strong, because they said, we're tolerant even when, he's not. He's willing, they took the moral high ground, saying, he's willing to accept money from an alcohol company, but he's not willing to wear a shirt with an alcohol logo on it, so they came out looking a lot, that probably went against his message, he came out looking like an idiot, whereas, I wouldn't say looking like an idiot, he came out looking like a hypocrite. And, it would have been better if he came out and said, I'll take a, match payment 10% less. Because, I know that's more, or 5% less. I know that's less, that's more than what VB sponsors us for, but in our revenue, but I'm going to do that on principle. I don't want to take, I don't want to take alcohol money. I don't want to wear the jersey. I know Cricket Australia, and that way, everyone comes out looking good, right? VB look like they're tolerant because they're not forcing a Muslim to where they're not going to cut the sponsorship, because if they cut the sponsorship, they look like what they call Islamophobes. They look like they're intolerant to religion. But so they did the right, like from a PR standpoint, they came out looking like $1 million because they get a massive PR boost out of it, because they're tolerant. They're still paying the same amount even when the players are not wearing the jerseys. Like, how good is the VB? Whereas Farad Ahmed came out looking like a hypocrite, and Cricket Australia also came out looking good. Well, they were put in an awkward position. Like, they were also I think they were put in an awkward position, whereas, they still, because they still accepted the money while they took the logo off. Obviously from, agreement with VB, but I think what Ahmed said, I'll take a 5% pay cut, I'll take 10% pay cut, and my match fee to represent, what I believe is the payment from the alcohol, from VB, then everyone would have came out looking good. Everyone would have, everyone would have said, yeah, that's good. How great is that? Like, everyone, it's all good all around. And I think that's where players need to learn, public relations. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to say here, is that there's ways to just go about things, get your message out without damaging your employer. Because quite frankly, all like that Farad Ahmed incident, it only really affects him, but that could have really. I'm not sure if VB still sponsor Cricket Australia. Probably should have looked that up before I did this podcast, but they came out looking great. But for example, the Manly situation, the way that both the club and the players handled that was absolutely terrible. They went from looking like they could scrape into the bottom of the 8, finish 7th or 8th on the ladder. Instead, they miss the 8. They lose their last 7 games. They finish 11th. And they miss out on the 8. Then they have they lose their last 7 or 8 games. They're getting slammed. The media slams them. Everyone slams them. They just say they all there's no factions. Hazard's been sacked. There's divide between management and the Penn family, which owns Manly. There's a divide between management and the playing group. There's a divide in the playing group. This is where they could have handled things a lot better. Where if they just played in the jersey, then they look like they make the club look bad, saying like, oh, you're making Christian, strong people with strong Christian face playing that, and they look like the better, they look like the bigger man, but then now they look like players that sabotage the Manly season. So, with Netball Australia, the players could literally send the game broke. They could send them into liquidation. And yes, that is a bankruptcy reference, because there is actually you always tell someone that works in bankruptcy, because there is a difference between bankruptcy and liquidation. So on the corporate side, they could send someone into the company into liquidation. So that's where so it's an interesting case where if the players really need to learn. I think they do all this media training on how to speak to the media. I think this is one way, one thing that they could really, they could expand their horizons there, right? They could really say, how we speak to things speak about things in the media with things that we don't agree with. Because quite frankly, they're costing their employees millions. And, so I think I think that would be probably the next stage of communications with players in the future, saying go from here, point A, to point B. They're at point A at the moment, and the evolution of it will be all this. Interested to hear what you think about these situations, how players speak in the media landscape. Obviously, there's another dimension that I didn't speak about, which is obviously plays being the bad guy. Obviously, that's more in combat sports, like boxing and MMA. You have people like Anthony Mundine, who just trash talk no end. You had, even Muhammad Ali, got under the people's skin. What do people think about that? Because that's obviously another layer of this on top of it. Because that in combat sport that actually brings in pay-per-views. Someone, it's a story at the end of time. With wrestling, the same thing in pro wrestling, I know that's a fake sport, but pro wrestling, boxing, MMA, a guy builds them up to be a bad guy because they realize that people get so wound up on it, they want to see their ass get whooped. So they get more pay-per-view buys. So, in that field it actually makes some money, whereas in team sport it more costs them money. So, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on this. Are you entertained by it? Do you think players should not speak out? Do you think players should speak out? Do you think the players should be, my opinion is here, because, just to, put a lid on it. Speak out, but put it in a way that is more that someone can learn from it, rather than just saying what basically ways being betrayed. These guys are dickheads. Our sponsors are dickheads, which is essentially what they're saying. Because quite frankly, you doing that just makes yourself look like a dickhead. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what you think. And yeah, until next time, have a good one.